Let's talk a little bit more about religion.
Let's do it.
Because we're talking about education.
Yep.
So a bill that would mandate the 10 Commandments in classrooms is part of a larger effort to inject religion into public schools. What are the constitutional and social implications of this? And where do you see the line between religious freedom and religious imposition? And I think that your organization specifically is in a unique position to answer this, as it being one of your core tenets, in that you look at religious freedoms in addition to education, and it just happens to be that they're very much being blended right now.
And they have been in Texas for a while, and I think that our founder Cecile saw that when she went to the State Board of Education and saw the business, the politic, and religion all being intersecting in these really unique ways. The South, I think, in general is that way, but Texas, we like to be the poster child for all things interrelated between religion and public spaces, which, there's this, we say, well, isn't there a separation of church and state? Sort of that's part of our Constitution. And you have actual real legislators saying that's a myth. It's like, actually, that's not a myth. That's one of the sort of the foundational principles of the founding of our country. But it's up for debate, apparently. And I think if you think about the real implications of 10 Commandments that are part of, even if you don't know very much about religion, you know that it's a tenet of one religion, Christianity, being placed in the public space of a school, has to be in the classroom in front. Can't be in a corner somewhere. It has to be right there.
I was going to ask that.
Has to be a certain size where, imagine a Muslim or Jewish or atheist, not in some students of no religious background, having to see that every day, right? Or a teacher feeling like they have to explain it in some way. That's not religious freedom. That's religious coercion.
Imposition, right?
Imposition. It is promoting one religion over another, which in and of itself is contrary to, again, the foundation of our country, pluralism. And it puts it in the public space, in our education system, in a way that doesn't allow our young people to think about or have the option to think about anything outside of that. So yeah, it's not just in our school buildings, right? We're seeing white Christian nationalism play out in multiple arenas in our country. Texas is a great example of where that's taking place. The book bans, anti-DEI legislation, whitewashing of history. So the public sphere, public education is one place, but it is part of this much broader effort that we're seeing throughout our country to push Christian nationalism onto people. And it is against many of our foundational principles, and you are seeing litigation come out against it because it obviously, if you look at it from the outside, it is a violation of people's rights. But I think it's just something that we have to keep an eye on because it has such further implications outside of public schools. It is coming into our public societal sort of everyday life language in a way that's very concerning.
Right. And I think there's you've said the phrase a couple of times, this white Christian nationalism, and it's important to distinguish that between traditional Christian values in their truest sense.
That's right.
Right. And, the 10 Commandments, for example, right? I was trying to think of some examples, but the 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what they're trying to promote. They're trying to promote this idea that being an American, or in some ways, or a Texan, in this, when we say nationalism, we can talk about being a Texan too, right?
Yes.
Means also tying that into being a Christian, and this sense of patriotism, and that if you are going to embody being a good American, that means that you also incorporate being a Christian, regardless of the teachings and the morality that you hold, right?
Correct. I mean, it's brilliant if you think about it. And one of the reasons why Texas Freedom Network in our next 30 years, we have to reclaim the narrative of what it means to be Christian, what it means to be patriotic, what is democracy, right? And I think you see the vulnerable place that people who do use faith as a way to make decisions in places like the Valley. Paula Ramos speaks about it in some of her books, and she's a journalist, and saying Latin culture, people from Mexico and from Latin America value faith. They use that to make their decisions, and they want to be patriotic American citizens. And so if that means subscribing to this sort of assimilation, white Christian nationalism, they will fall into that because they want to be an American.
And it's a reason, like in a lot of the counties along the border, turned a little redder this time, right? Right. Yeah.
And I think hopefully, what those communities are starting to see is that they were sold a lie, right? That this narrative that was placed in front of them was to trick them into believing that that side had their best interest at heart. Now that they're seeing their federal benefits being taken, their communities being ravaged by ICE raids, their public schools being de-invested in, I think we hope to start to see that they question, at least, even if they don't know who and which way they're going to vote, that they start to ask good questions. And I think we play a role in that, like Texas Freedom Network and our young people down there. It's to start talking to communities about how are your values being represented in this current administration?
Yeah.
Do you believe that they have your best interests at heart? And I think that, that's what people empowered do. They prey on vulnerability.
Right. And I think it's one of the biggest, I want to call it cognitive dissonance, but, poor people voting Republican. I don't know how else to try to say this more softly, but
yeah.
Like they're doing the least for you. They don't have your back, and they're playing the culture wars and preying on your beliefs and your religion, while simultaneously divesting in your communities and taking healthcare from the most vulnerable people. And so, but they play up, the invasions, the more sensitive social issues, right? In order to garner the vote.
Well, what the right seized on in this last election cycle was fear, right? If you think about years ago when we had Obama coming in, it was hope, right? It was connection, hope. This time around, we're seeing them seize on fear. They're coming to get whoever they are, they're coming to get your jobs. They are going to hurt your family, right? And so if you just think about that psychologically, all you want to do is distance yourselves from the they, right? Even if the they are people that look like you that they're talking about, or you yourself. It's like, I want to be an American, and I want to be part of this society. And so I think we're going to have to spend a lot of time reclaiming that narrative of saying, no, that is not democracy. That is not fair representation. They do not have your best interest at heart. And so we'll have to look at demographics in our population and figure out what message do we need to craft to help them not see it our way, but to ask good questions to decipher for themselves whether or not people are representing their interests.